because they're developing so much, Fantastic Four is coming and Dr. Doom. So there's no one really that I have an eye on. I'm here for the most unexpected characters that are pulled into the MCU.
I remember at the time going, I'm so hot I could die, or it's like this is taking forever.
Just when I talk about her, I talk about how unpredictable she is.
She looked so beautiful in it, but she was like this.
Why do you let them believe those things about you?
Because the truth is too awful.
I want my prize!
So my first question is for all of you. Obviously, the MCU already has two very beloved witches in the form of Agatha and Wanda. So when it came to preparing to join that group, did you go back and kind of study those earlier performances? Did you get any tips from Kathryn? And generally, what was your witch-speration, as I'm coining today?
Witch-speration. I like that.
I mean, I think we definitely rewatched Wandavision.
Yeah, we watched. Yeah.
Make sure we were in that world
and get familiar with Agatha.
Yeah.
But our characters are so uniquely us, and I like how many different types of witches are in this show. So we kind of just created our own characters on our own and had them all gel together in a coven.
And Deborah, Mrs. Hart, aka Sharon, is kind of a different kind of witch. And
She certainly is, isn't she? We call her special.
but how have you found kind of returning to this character in this kind of new, unexpected direction for her?
It was just a delight, honestly. It was just fun. It just was when you have distance from something, it's really fun. I remember at the time going, I'm so hot I could die, or it's like this is taking forever. But looking back on it now, there was more fun than the other, and it's just the imagination of it, and to have worked as I have worked and get this now is just, it's cake. I call it cake.
The series picks up after Multiverse of Madness, of course. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to just touch on it briefly because I feel Elizabeth Olsen has been fairly candid about kind of her own opinion about Multiverse of Madness, about how some of the themes from Wandavision maybe weren't picked up in the film completely seamlessly, let's say. And I just wondered, obviously, you were the one who masterminded WandaVision and sort of spent so much time with the character. How did you feel about Wanda's depiction and her ultimate fate in Multiverse of Madness?
Well, I mean, I love Wanda, and I love all the characters that I've had the privilege of working with, Natasha, Carol Danvers, everybody. But one of the sort of agreements about being a part of the MCU is you're kind of borrowing characters and storylines for a time, and you get your experience with them, and then things continue, which is so special. That's one of the really wonderful special things about the MCU. So and a lot of my friends and colleagues were on that film. So I feel grateful for my time with her, and just sort of hopeful for more of her in any way that might happen, and really just more of Lizzie in anything. She's so spectacular.
Well, also in the episodes that we've seen, obviously we can't say too much, but I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say there's a passing mention of vampires, which kind of is great for kind of tying the show in with the growing kind of supernatural wing of the MCU. And I wondered, obviously, this also comes just a couple of months after Marvel themselves sort of had a gentle joke about the Blade movie, and so I wondered, is Blade a character that you'd be interested to write for if the opportunity came up? And do you have your eye on any other kind of supernatural characters? I
love the character Blade. I also am just an enormous fan of Mahershala Ali, and I'm excited for that property. It sort of feels like they were developing near us, so it sort of feels like something that's out of my reach, and I'm as a fan wishing it well. And in terms of other characters, there isn't anybody. Because they're developing so much, Fantastic Four is coming and Dr. Doom. So there's no one really that I have an eye on. I'm here for the most unexpected characters that are pulled into the MCU.
Well, the show is very kind of lavish and visually interesting in terms of not only the sets where the Witch's Road and obviously the the stations upon it, let's say, all seem very practical. But also the costumes are incredible and ever-changing.
He's amazing.
He's really a genius.
Daniel Selon,
He's amazing.
costume designer.
And such a lovely, kind person.
Yeah.
He's,
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite costume or kind of garment from the season?
I mean, my Witches Road look, this pink dress that I wore, it was just like easy to move in, but also there's so many little details on the actual dress that kind of give a nod to my story. And I think, there's so much work
every
went
costume,
into
every
it.
character.
But you
he
couldn't
did that.
sit in that, could you?
No.
Technically, she could. but not for
She
wrinkle.
looked so beautiful in it, but she was like this.
But there's so many.
Because she couldn't, she
Because it would wrinkle, so I had like
And I
get
remember
an apple
looking at
box
you
and
going,
put the
thank
dress
God
over
that's
it.
not me. Thank God, thank God.
Well,
Like
yeah.
the linings of Agatha's
Yeah.
coat, and Patty's character has this amazing, all these images woven in that if audiences really look carefully, like there's all kinds of nuggets in there, and things that he carries through from costume to costume, even as the worlds change. It's pretty amazing.
Well, lastly, just before I have to head off, obviously there's a really amazing musical number at the start, towards the beginning of the show, and more musical numbers to come. I wondered if you could just give me an insight into sort of learning those and kind of harmonizing, working as a team on those, and also, what your response would be to any fans who maybe aren't like huge musical lovers. Would you want them to kind of keep an open mind and sort of get on board with those?
Well, the show's not a musical.
Yeah.
We have music in it, but the show is just so many things. And the song itself, I think, adds to the story so much. And I think you'll see why the song is in there once
It's part
you
of the
watch the
plot.
show.
It's not just like extraneous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a really good Doug Peck.
Yeah.
Doug Peck was our
vocal
vocal coach, and he was, again, another kind person because
Yeah, and a little bit of a witch
I am very
himself.
challenged in that direction. And he was like, I would go, oh God, I'm so sorry you have to listen to this. And
But
he'd
he
go,
drew
"No,
it
no,
out of
it's-"
all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not all
Yeah.
Patty LaPone, you know what I mean?
And he got great stuff from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, a big mystery in this series is who Joe Locke is playing. And I'm sure that you've heard some of the fan theories, a lot around Billy, a.k.a. Wiccan. But, of course, you've subverted expectations before, such as with Ralph Boner in WandaVision. So I wondered, should fans be prepared for big surprises around this character, things they're not expecting?
I think so. I mean, I think, something that I always say is like, with WandaVision, with Agatha, and with the way that I like to craft narratives, it's not about the answer to the question. It's how we answer it. So I think, that's my hope, is that fans will enjoy the reveal, like how we sort of like unfold and unfurl both the mystery of like who is this character, but also there is an abundance of mysteries inside of this show. So there's something for everybody in the twists and turns.
Yes, and I'm excited to find out more. Of course, Agatha is still very much a baddie in the show, and I think we see that best in her treatment of Sharon. But, there are moments of vulnerability here that we certainly didn't see in WandaVision.
Yeah.
So how did you find kind of towing that line between ensuring she is a villain, but also giving her that empathy, but also as well, do you think viewers will kind of come away from that with a very different opinion of her than maybe they had previously?
That's an interesting question. I mean, early on in the development process, the question was, is this a redemption story? And at this point in promotion, I can't answer that without it being a spoiler. But I think that for me as a viewer, that's an intriguing question. I'm entering into the show with a character that I love. Are we going to redeem her or not? Like, where will she kind of land? There is a lot of vulnerability. We really sort of tried to titrate it correctly, being cognizant of the fact that it is a comedy, this is fun, this is a ride, right? So especially in the front half of the season, leaning more toward the horror, comedy, and thrill and adventure. But it goes to a deep place. And that's really about, you know, the kind of artist I am and what interests me is really, it's always the story underneath, which is how WandaVision was structured. Like, what's the deep down? And it's very much how Kathryn works. Like, Kathryn is like how far can we go inside of a human? And you know, we tried to go all the way with Agatha.
With Marvel, there's so much said about post-credits scenes, but what I find with Agatha All Along is that the credits themselves are just so mesmerizing, and it's reminiscent of WandaVision, also had great sequences. But I noticed that with each episode I watched, I kind of understood the credits more. There was more context coming in, and I wondered if that's something viewers should be looking out for. Are there clues, references, hints in those credits that they should watch out for?
Yes. Good watching, David. Yes.
Okay, I won't push for any more for that. But lastly, I wanted to ask about Aubrey Plaza, because what an amazing entrance she makes into this show, multiple great entrances. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about, you know, how you want this character to be received, because, you know, obviously there's so many great characters in the show, but this one in particular does feel like a standout.
First of all, I hadn't really thought about her entrances, and I love that you highlighted that, because you're right. Because when I talk about her, I talk about how unpredictable she is, and she does a lot of bursting into the show in various ways. So I thank you for illuminating that. That's lovely. Because yeah, it's kind of the only way to write her is that she's a shock to the system every time she appears. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Aubrey is very witchy in real life. She wrote a book called The Christmas Witch. Like, she, you know, is subservient to the Dark Lords, as she's professed in many, like, public moments. She's amazing. But she also is a tremendous actor. And there's real depth to this character, and there's actually a lot of pain to this character. And I'm excited for people to go on that journey, to sort of sign up for Aubrey being wackadoo Aubrey, but then stay for the really beautiful, nuanced work that she does in the show.